Marcus Chen stood alone in the gleaming corridor of Preston Financial Tower at 2 in the morning, pushing an industrial mop across marble floors that cost more per square foot than most people earned in a month. The building hummed around him with the particular silence of wealth at rest, climate control systems purring, security drones making their prescribed rounds on whisper-quiet rotors, holographic displays cycling through market data for an audience of no one. He moved with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times, his reflection distorting and reforming in the polished stone beneath his feet. Past the executive suites with their frosted smart glass walls. Past the conference rooms where billion-dollar deals happened over synthetic coffee and performance-enhanced focus sessions. Past a family photo on Richard Preston's desk, Marcus's late wife Elena smiling beside her sister Victoria at some charity function. Back when things were different, his phone buzzed against his hip. Marcus glanced at the message preview floating in his peripheral vision courtesy of his basic neural link, the kind every wage worker had, just enough bandwidth for texts and work assignments. Lily had sent her latest economics paper. 22 pages on wealth inequality in post-automation markets. He smiled, tapped a response with sub-vocalized commands. Proud of you. Lilybug. Get some sleep. The elevator to the penthouse required a retinal scan. Marcus positioned himself, waited for the green pulse of recognition, and stepped inside as the doors whispered shut. 48 floors up in 3 seconds, the kind of acceleration that would make most people's stomachs lurch. He felt nothing. The penthouse was his, minimalist furniture in grays and whites, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a city that never truly went dark anymore, just shifted from daylight commerce to nighttime data flows. Wall screens flickered to life as he entered, displaying his real-time holdings across 3 states. 48 buildings. Some residential. Most commercial. All profitable. All invisible to everyone who looked at him and saw only the janitor's uniform. Marcus stripped off the navy coveralls, revealing the tailored shirt underneath. Silk blend, custom fitted, probably worth more than he supposedly earned in a week. He poured himself 2 fingers of scotch, the good stuff, aged in actual wooden barrels before the grain synthesizers made that quaint and unnecessary, and stood at the window watching traffic drones trace luminescent paths between towers. His reflection stared back at him. 42 years old. Graying at the temples. Hands that looked rough from work because they were, regardless of the balance in his accounts. Elena used to trace those hands. Marveling that someone so gentle could also be so stubborn. You're playing a long game, she'd said once, during those final weeks when the doctors couldn't explain why her heart kept skipping beats, why her implants showed system errors no specialist could diagnose. Promise me you'll teach Lily what matters. Not what they think matters. What actually matters, he'd promised. And he'd kept it, even when Victoria swooped in at the funeral with her designer grief and her billionaire husband and her certainty that Marcus would crumble without her guidance. 7 years. 7 years of poor Marcus and we're here for you and opportunities that were really just reminders of his place in the family hierarchy. 7 years of watching his daughter navigate a world that would judge her by her last name and her address and the credit score visible to anyone who cared to scan her public profile. 7 years of building an empire so quietly that even the people living in his buildings didn't know who truly owned them. The scotch burned going down. Marcus finished it, set the glass in the cleaning unit, and pulled up tomorrow's schedule. Morning routine with Lily. Drop off at Columbia. 3 property inspections. Evening shift at Preston Tower. And in 2 weeks, the engagement party that would change everything. His jaw tightened. Time to stop hiding. The memory always started the same way, Elena's hand going cold in his. The hospital room's antiseptic smell mixing with the ozone scent of overworked medical equipment, Lily's 12-year-old face crumpling as she understood what the flatlining monitors meant, then Victoria arriving in a rush of expensive perfume and genuine tears, because however complicated their relationship became later, she had loved her sister. Richard pressed him behind her, uncomfortable in a hospital corridor the way wealthy men always were around death, the great equalizer their money couldn't optimize away. Marcus. Victoria gripped his shoulders. What do you need? Anything. We're family, I need, his voice caught. Lily was in the hallway, being comforted by a nurse whose empathy implant probably flagged her for grief counseling protocols. I need to get my daughter home, of course. Richard's driver is downstairs. And Marcus, don't worry about work. Take all the time you need. We'll figure something out. He should have heard it then, the assumption in her voice. The certainty that he'd need figuring out, that his life would require her intervention. But grief made everything distant, wrapped the world in cotton batting, turned even Victoria's performative sympathy into something he was almost grateful for. The funeral was worse. 100 people Marcus barely knew, all there because Victoria had handled the arrangements, which meant Elena's simple wishes got upgraded to a society event. Premium memory streaming for remote attendees. Grief counselors with top-tier emotional regulation training. A holographic eulogy that made Elena's image speak words she'd never have chosen. Marcus stood beside Lily in a borrowed suit while relatives whispered just loudly enough to be heard. Poor thing. What will he do? Elena always was the ambitious one. Well, at least Victoria's looking after them. Lily's hand found his, squeezed hard enough to hurt. Even at 12, she understood what they were really saying. That night, after everyone left, after the grief counselors logged off and the food synthesizers went quiet, Marcus sat in their modest apartment, truly modest then, a rental in Queens with actual economic constraints, and made a decision. Let them think what they want. Protect Lily. Build in silence. Elena had left them the seed money, her life insurance payout optimized by pre-mortem planning she'd insisted on despite his protests. Not enough to retire on. Enough to invest, if you knew where to look. And Marcus had spent his 20s in property management before lateral moves and bad timing left him maintaining buildings instead of acquiring them. He knew where to look. The first property was a foreclosure in Brooklyn, a 6-unit walk-up with good bones and terrible previous management. He bought it through a shell LLC, spent his nights learning code to automate systems he couldn't afford to hire out, spent his weekends teaching himself. Lily helped sometimes, holding tools, asking questions, learning without realizing she was learning. 6 months later he sold it for 40% profit and bought 2 more buildings. A year after Elena's death, he had 7 properties. 2 years, 15. By year 3 he'd established enough patterns that the acquisitions became almost algorithmic. He could spot undervalued real estate the way some people could spot marked cards. And all the while, he kept the day job. Kept wearing the uniform. Kept showing up at Preston family dinners where Victoria asked about his situation and Brandon barely acknowledged his existence. You could tell them, Lily said once, 15 years old and angry about something Victoria had said. You could show them the accounts, the properties, everything. I could, Marcus agreed. But what would that teach you? That we're not poor, that revenge is loud and temporary, or quiet and permanent. That real power doesn't announce itself. That people reveal who they are when they think you're beneath them. He'd met her eyes. Your mother said substance over show. I'm showing you substance. Lily had thought about that, then nodded. When do we get to do the show part, when it matters most? Marcus woke at 5:30 without an alarm, internal clock calibrated by years of early shifts. The apartment was quiet, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with obsolete appliances he kept because they worked. A living room that could have been any lower middle-class residence in any city. Except he owned the building. And the 12 others on this block. But the furnishings were real, the constraints genuine enough that Lily understood what money meant when you didn't have infinite access to it. He made coffee the old way, ground beans, and hot water, while the city brightened outside. Newsfeeds scrolled across every available surface, you couldn't escape the information anymore. It found you through windows and mirrors and any reflective surface the ad networks could colonize. Marcus ignored most of it. Global markets up. New automation protocols pending. Celebrity drama on Mars. The usual background noise of a civilization with too much bandwidth and too little meaning. Morning. Lily emerged from her room at 6, already dressed for campus. Dark hair pulled back, her mother's eyes sharp with intelligence that saw through most pretense. She'd inherited Elena's bone structure too, the kind of beauty that turned heads but didn't need enhancement to register. Some of her classmates probably assumed she couldn't afford genetic optimizations. They were wrong on both counts. Sleep okay? Marcus handed her coffee, finished the paper. Sent it to you, read it. It's good. The section on post-scarcity labor markets is going to annoy your professor. Good. Lily smiled. That's the point. Everyone keeps pretending automation solved inequality when it just moved the goalposts. They ate breakfast, eggs, toast, actual food because synthetic nutrients always tasted like compromised virtue, and talked about her classes, her thesis, her plans. Not about the engagement party in 2 weeks. Not yet. That conversation required more preparation. The drive to Columbia took 40 minutes in Marcus's 2010 Honda Civic, one of the last manual control vehicles still legal on metropolitan roads. Automated traffic flowed around them in perfect formation while Marcus piloted through gaps with the muscle memory of someone who learned to drive before AI navigation became mandatory. Lily watched the city pass with the particular attention of someone cataloging it for future use. You could get a new car, she said, not for the first time. This one works. It broadcasts struggling parent to anyone who sees it. Good, she laughed, shook her head. When this is over, I'm buying you something with current decade tech. When this is over, you're finishing your degree. He pulled up to Columbia's main gate, where security drones scanned student IDs and facial recognition confirmed campus access. Go learn something, love you too, Dad. She leaned over, kissed his cheek, and was gone into the crowd of students with their neural overlays and optimized study drugs and casual assumption that intelligence came from enhancement rather than work. Marcus watched her disappear. Felt the familiar tightness in his chest. Elena should have seen this. Should have watched their daughter navigate the world they'd prepared her for. Should have been here for the moment when all the quiet work paid off, but Elena wasn't here, and Victoria was, and in 2 weeks, at an engagement party that would showcase everything wrong with their family's values, Marcus would stop pretending. He shifted into drive and headed for his real office. The office didn't look like an office. That was the point. A converted warehouse in Long Island City, unmarked exterior, security that appeared minimal but tracked every approach with military-grade precision. Inside, open floor plan. 6 analysts monitoring real estate markets across the eastern seaboard, and a private room where Marcus kept the physical records he didn't trust to digital storage. Morning, boss. Sarah Kim, his lead analyst, looked up from a holographic display showing property valuations in real time. Jersey City portfolio is performing above projections. Want to move on the Atlantic Avenue complex? Not yet. Wait for the zoning decision. Marcus shed his jacket, pulled up his own display. 48 properties across 3 states, total valuation approaching $2.3 billion. All filtered through enough shell corporations and holding companies that even forensic accountants would need weeks to trace ownership. Anything from the Preston Tower inspection, HVAC on floors 30 through 35 needs replacement within 6 months. I sent the report to building management. Send it again. Make it sound urgent. He smiled slightly. Richard hates unexpected expenses. Sarah raised an eyebrow. You know he's going to complain to his property manager, right? Who's going to tell him the owner is being unreasonable about maintenance timelines? Good. Let him complain. Let him think some faceless landlord is squeezing him. Marcus pulled up the report, scanned it. How much? 4.2 million. Full replacement, upgraded systems, minimal tenant disruption, approve it. Eat the cost. But send Richard an itemized bill with a 30-day payment schedule. You're having fun with this. 7 years of family dinners where he asked about my janitorial work. I'm allowed a little fun. The morning disappeared into property analysis, tenant relations, market projections. Marcus had built this the same way he'd built everything, carefully, precisely, with attention to details others overlooked. Real estate wasn't glamorous. It was maintenance schedules and zoning laws and understanding that buildings were just very expensive machines that needed constant care. The people who treated them like status symbols always failed. The people who treated them like complicated problems always succeeded. By noon he'd approved 3 acquisitions, declined 2, and restructured financing on a mixed-use development in Brooklyn. By 2 he'd changed back into his janitor's uniform and headed for Preston Tower. The evening shift was different from night work. More people around. Executives leaving late, security personnel changing shifts, other maintenance workers moving through their routines. Marcus liked it because it made him invisible in the way only service workers could be, present but unseen, necessary but unacknowledged, part of the building's infrastructure rather than its human population. He was cleaning the executive floor when Richard Preston emerged from his office, already on a call. Neural overlay displaying whoever he was talking to in his peripheral vision. He walked past Marcus without acknowledgement. 3 steps. 5. Then stopped, turned back. Marcus. Didn't see you there, Mr. Preston. Marcus kept his tone neutral, respectful, the voice of someone who understood hierarchy. You're Elena's husband. Victoria's brother-in-law, yes, sir. Richard looked uncomfortable, the way people always did when work life and personal life intersected unexpectedly. How's Lily? Victoria mentioned she's at Columbia, doing well. Thank you for asking. Good, good. Smart kid. Elena would be proud. Richard's call was still holding, tiny avatar gesturing impatiently in the corner of his vision. Well. Good seeing you. Keep up the good work. He left. Marcus returned to cleaning, expression unchanged. But inside, the familiar calculation, Richard Preston, tech billionaire, actual genius in narrow domains, paying premium rent to a landlord he'd recognize if he ever bothered to check the ownership records. But people like Richard didn't check records. They paid accountants to check records. And accountants only flagged irregularities, not the regular business of shells within shells within shells. Marcus finished the floor, moved to the next, let his mind drift to the engagement party. 2 weeks. Victoria would want him there early, probably invent some reason he should help with setup. She'd prepared surprises. He'd heard her on the phone with Lily, that particular tone Victoria used when she thought she was being generous. She'd want an audience for those surprises. Want people to see her helping her struggling family members. His phone buzzed. Text from Lily. Sloan just told me Brandon proposed. To her. Brandon. Did you know about this? Marcus stopped mid-stroke with the mop. Typed back. Brandon's getting married, to my girlfriend. Dad, what do I do? He stared at the message, recalibrating everything. Lily was dating someone. Lily was dating someone seriously enough to be upset about an engagement. Lily was dating Brandon's fiancé, which meant. Another text from Lily, she didn't know he was my cousin. I didn't know she was dating him. This is a disaster. Marcus leaned against the wall, thought fast. Typed, come home. We need to talk, on my way. He finished his shift on autopilot, mind racing through implications. This changed the timeline. Changed the strategy. If Lily was dating Sloan Whitmore, and he knew that name, Gerald Whitmore, real estate mogul, competitor and occasional hostile bidder on properties Marcus wanted, then the engagement party wasn't just Victoria's stage for performative charity anymore, it was everyone's stage. For everything, Lily was pacing when he got home, phone clutched in one hand, expression oscillating between fury and panic. She thought it was a business arrangement. He thought she was playing hard to get. Nobody communicated. How do people not communicate about getting engaged? Marcus hung up his jacket, processed. Back up. Start from the beginning. When did you meet Sloane? 6 months ago. LGBTQ Alliance meeting at Columbia. Lily stopped pacing, met his eyes. Dad, I was going to tell you. I needed to figure some things out first. About myself. About what I wanted. I know, that stopped her. You know, Lily, you've been happier for 6 months than I've seen you since your mother died. You think I wouldn't notice? Or figure out why? He sat. Gestured for her to do the same. Tell me about Sloane, and she did. It poured out, the connection at that first meeting, coffee dates where Sloane kept being surprised that Lily checked prices, study sessions that turned into more. How Sloane came from money but seemed uncomfortable with it. How she visited their modest apartment and called it real like that was precious. How Marcus had met her and she'd been perfect, respectful, genuinely interested in his thoughts on economic theory. She has no idea, Lily finished. About us. About what we have. She thinks I'm on scholarship, which I am, technically, just. She gestured helplessly, just you're funding your own scholarship through a trust one established. Marcus rubbed his temples. And she's engaged to Brandon because her father arranged it for business reasons? She came out at 16. She assumed Brandon knew. Brandon assumed. Lily made a disgusted sound. Brandon doesn't assume anything. Brandon accepts whatever his mother arranges, and now she's texting me that she's coming out publicly at the engagement party. That she's choosing me. That she doesn't care about the business arrangement or her father's plans or any of it. Lily's voice cracked slightly. Dad, I can't let her walk into that not knowing. Not knowing who we are. Not knowing that Brandon is my cousin. Not knowing that Victoria is going to make a spectacle and that you're planning, whatever you're planning. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, thinking through scenarios. Then, what if we tell her? Before the party, tell her everything that matters. The rest, he gestured at the apartment, the facade they'd maintained. The rest she'll figure out when everyone else does. Lily bit her lip. She'll think I lied to her. Did you? I didn't tell her the truth, Lily. Marcus leaned forward. Your mother grew up with money. She watched her family treat it like identity, like worth, like proof of value. She hated it. When we got married, in a courthouse, no ceremony, just us and 2 witnesses, her father disowned her for marrying beneath them. Victoria was the only one who stayed in touch, and even that was complicated. He paused. Your mother made me promise to teach you that who you are isn't what you have. That's what we've been doing. Not lying. Living truth. Does Sloane get to decide if that's truth or lying? Yes. And you get to find out if she's who you think she is. Lily was quiet, processing. Then her phone buzzed. She looked at it, went pale. What, Victoria? She wants us at the Metropolitan Club tomorrow morning. To discuss our roles in the engagement party. Lily's hands were shaking slightly. Dad, she's going to do something. I can feel it. Marcus felt it too, that familiar tightness, the sense of machinery clicking into place. He pulled out his own phone, made 3 calls in quick succession. First to Sarah, move up the Metropolitan Club inspection. I want full records by tomorrow morning. Second to his lawyer, confirm ownership documents for Preston Tower and the Met Club, physical copies, delivered tonight. Third to Gerald Whitmore's office, Tell him Marcus Chen would like to schedule a meeting. Soon. Urgent. Lily watched him work, recognition dawning. You're going to do it. At the party. I was always going to do it at the party. This just makes it more interesting. He met her eyes. But Lily, are you ready? Because once we do this, there's no going back. Victoria will know. Richard will know. Everyone will know. And some of them won't forgive it, will you? Will I what? Forgive them? For 7 years of poor Marcus and scholarship funds and opportunities that were really just reminders that we needed help, Marcus thought about that. About Sunday dinners and passive-aggressive concern and Brandon's indifference and Richard's awkward politeness and Victoria's certainty that she was being kind. About his daughter watching it all, absorbing lessons about worth and value and how people revealed themselves. Forgiveness isn't the point, he said finally. Understanding is. They need to understand what they assumed. What they missed. What it cost them to stop looking. He smiled slightly. And then we'll see if they're capable of learning. That's very zen, that's very your mother. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Lily said, I'm telling Sloane. Tomorrow. Before Victoria does whatever Victoria's planning. She deserves to know what she's walking into, she deserves to know who you are. Same thing. No, Lily. It's really not. One is circumstances. One is character. Make sure she understands the difference. Lily nodded, stood, kissed the top of his head. Love you, Dad, love you too, Lily bug. She retreated to her room. Marcus sat alone in the living room, looking at the modest furnishings, the obsolete appliances, the life they'd built that was real and fake simultaneously. In 2 weeks. The pretense would end. In 2 weeks, Victoria would get her stage and her audience and her chance to showcase her generosity. And Marcus would take that stage and show all of them, what 7 years of assumptions cost. He poured himself a drink from the cheap bottle he kept for appearances, toasted the empty room, and began to plan. The Metropolitan Club existed in that peculiar space where old money met new tech wealth and pretended they'd always belonged together. Crystal chandeliers upgraded with holographic enhancement cast light that adjusted automatically to flatter expensive cosmetic work. Smart glass walls displayed curated art that shifted based on the crowd's aggregated aesthetic preferences. Servers moved through the space with the practiced invisibility of people paid well to pretend they didn't exist, carrying trays of champagne engineered for optimal taste and minimal mourning consequences. Marcus stood in the entrance alcove, watching 500 people who thought they mattered congregate in a building he owned. The irony wasn't lost on him. Neither was the weight of the ownership documents folded in his inside jacket pocket, physical copies because some revelations required tangibility. Lily adjusted his tie, unnecessary but giving her hands something to do. She wore the vintage Chanel dress he'd kept from Elena's collection, preserved in climate-controlled storage that cost more per month than most people's rent. The dress looked inexpensive to untrained eyes, simple lines, quality that didn't announce itself. To someone who understood fabric and construction, it screamed wealth so old it didn't need validation. Nobody here would recognize it. That was the point. Last chance to back out, Lily said, voice low enough the security drones wouldn't register it as conversation requiring monitoring. You want to back out? I want to watch Victoria's face when you tell her you own the building she's standing in. Lily's smile was sharp, Elena's smile, the one that meant someone had miscalculated badly. But Dad, once we do this, I know. Marcus scanned the crowd through the entrance. Victoria holding court near the center. Custom Valentino gown that probably cost what he supposedly earned in 6 months. Brandon beside his fiancée, handsome and empty in the way trust fund kids often were. Richard Preston making small talk with tech moguls, his success so complete he'd forgotten what struggle looked like. It changes everything, good. Lily linked her arm through his. I'm tired of pretending we need their charity, they entered together. The room's ambient AI registered their arrival, adjusted the guest manifest, probably flagged them as lower priority attendees based on their visible credit scores and public profiles. Marcus felt the familiar sensation of being categorized and dismissed, the algorithmic indifference that treated him like background noise. Victoria spotted them immediately. Her face did something complicated, genuine affection for her late sister's family mixed with performative sympathy mixed with the particular satisfaction of being able to help people she considered unfortunate. She swept toward them, gown flowing, neural overlay probably already composing the perfect social media posts about family and generosity and support. Marcus. Oh, you came. Air kisses that didn't quite connect, perfume that cost more than his car was worth. And Lily, sweetie, that's a lovely, is that from Target? How resourceful. Lily's grip on Marcus's arm tightened fractionally. Her voice stayed pleasant. It was my mother's, actually. Oh. Victoria's expression flickered, she'd forgotten Elena had taste, that her sister's rejection of obvious wealth had been choice rather than necessity. Well, it's lovely. Very vintage. Come, I've saved you a table. She steered them through the crowd, past clusters of people whose neural overlays lit up with recognition protocols and social hierarchy assessments. Past tech founders and hedge fund managers and people whose wealth was so complete they'd stopped thinking about money as currency and started thinking about it as gravity, the force that kept everything orbiting around them. The table was in the back, near the kitchen doors. Far enough from the stage that nobody important would have to acknowledge them unless absolutely necessary. You'll be more comfortable here, Victoria said, squeezing Marcus's shoulder. Away from the noise. I know these events can be overwhelming. Marcus pulled out Lily's chair, sat beside her, and said nothing. Overhead, massive holographic displays cycled through photos of Brandon and Sloane, engagement shots that looked professionally art-directed because they were moments of manufactured intimacy designed for optimal social sharing. The couple looked happy in that curated way that meant someone's brand manager had earned their fee. She looks miserable, Lily murmured, studying Sloane's holographic face. Marcus followed her gaze. Lily was right. Sloane's smile hit all the technical markers, muscle engagement. Eye crinkle, the subtle indicators of genuine emotion that AI authentication looked for. But something underneath was wrong. The posture too stiff. The eyes too careful. Have you talked to her? Since yesterday? 3 times. She's coming out tonight, Dad. Right here. In front of everyone. Lily's hands were shaking slightly. She doesn't care anymore. About the arrangement, about her father's business plans, about any of it. Does she know we're? No. I couldn't. Not over the phone. Not before she walks into this. Lily looked at him, Elena's eyes in her face. I was going to tell her before Victoria does whatever Victoria's planning to do. But then I thought, maybe it's better if everything happens at once. All the truth at the same time. So nobody can say we were manipulating anyone. Marcus considered that. The logic was sound. The emotional calculus less certain. But Lily had Elena's instincts for truth-telling, that particular courage that didn't flinch from consequences. Your call, he said. But Lily, when Sloane finds out, she's going to have questions. About why you didn't tell her. Make sure you have answers that matter. I have answers. I'm just not sure they're good enough. Before Marcus could respond, the room's ambient sound shifted, that particular change in collective attention that meant someone important had arrived. The entrance filled with people, Gerald Whitmore, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, the kind of old-school real estate power that survived every market shift through pure instinct. His wife Candace, significantly younger, wearing enough diamonds that her net worth was literally visible from across the room. And between them, Sloane, she wore an engagement dress that probably required its own insurance policy, form-fitting in ways that felt designed to display rather than flatter. Her dark hair was pulled back severe enough to hurt. Her makeup was flawless in that way that meant professionals with algorithmic precision tools had spent hours making her look naturally beautiful. She looked like a very expensive doll someone had posed carefully for optimal presentation. Her eyes scanned the room with barely concealed desperation. Found Lily. And something in her posture changed, tension releasing, breath catching, the kind of involuntary response bodies had before conscious thought could moderate them. Marcus watched Brandon approach his fiancée, kiss her cheek for the hovering media drones. Watched Sloane flinch, just slightly, barely enough to register. Watched Brandon not notice because Brandon never noticed anything that didn't directly affect Brandon's comfort. But Gerald Whitmore noticed. His gaze followed his daughter's line of sight across the crowded room to the back table where Marcus and Lily sat. His expression did something complicated: recognition, calculation, the look of someone reassessing every assumption about a situation. He sees it, Marcus said quietly. Sees what? The way she's looking at you. Your father isn't stupid, Lily. That's the look of someone doing property analysis in real time. Gerald's eyes met Marcus's across the distance. Something passed between them, not quite recognition, but acknowledgement. Two people who understood how to read what others missed. Then Gerald's attention was pulled away by someone wanting to discuss market trends. And the moment dissolved into the general chaos of 500 people pretending they enjoyed each other's company. I need to talk to her. Lily was already standing, smoothing her dress. Lily, I know. Stay calm. Don't make a scene. Let you do your thing first. She squeezed his shoulder. But Dad, I can't watch her suffer through this without at least telling her she's not alone. That whatever happens tonight, I'm with her. Marcus nodded. Watched his daughter navigate the crowd with Elena's particular grace, not trying to blend in or stand out, just moving through space with confidence that came from knowing who she was regardless of who was watching. She disappeared toward the bathrooms. Sloane excused herself moments later, following the same path. Marcus sat alone at the back table, watching patterns emerge. Victoria glad handing donors for her various charities, each interaction perfectly calibrated for maximum social capital return. Richard in deep conversation with tech founders, probably discussing market disruptions and automation strategies. Brandon accepting congratulations with the air of someone who'd never questioned whether he deserved congratulation. His phone buzzed. Text from Sarah at the office: ownership docs delivered to your table. Check the floral centerpiece. Marcus glanced at the elaborate flower arrangement dominating their table. Reached into it carefully. Felt the waterproof envelope tucked between stems. He palmed it, slipped it into his jacket beside the other documents. Everything in place. Another text, this one from his lawyer. Preston just accessed building ownership records for Met Club. He knows. Or he's about to know. Marcus smiled slightly, typed back, perfect timing. The room's ambient sound shifted again, Victoria moving toward the stage, preparing for announcements. Marcus felt his heartbeat accelerate slightly, adrenaline response to 7 years of patience reaching culmination. He thought about Elena, about promises made in hospital rooms, about Lily at 12 watching her family assume her father would crumble. Time to show them what crumbling actually looked like. Lily returned first, flushed and breathless, lipstick slightly smudged. She dropped into her chair, hands shaking. I told her. Not everything. But enough. Lily's voice was barely audible over the ambient noise. She knows you're planning something. She knows we're not what everyone thinks. She knows, her voice caught. She knows I love her. And Dad, she said it back. Right there in the hallway with people walking past and security drones recording, and she didn't care. She just said it. Marcus covered her hand with his. And now she's coming out. Tonight. She's going to walk up to that stage and tell everyone. Including Brandon, including her father, including 500 people with recording devices, that she's gay and in love with me and the engagement is a business arrangement she never actually agreed to. That's going to complicate things. That's going to make things perfect. Lily's smile was fierce. Let them see what happens when people stop pretending. When everyone stops pretending at once, Sloane returned to her table looking determined and terrified in equal measure. Brandon said something to her, probably asking if she was all right. She nodded, didn't look at him, kept her eyes fixed on the stage where Victoria was adjusting the microphone. The lights dimmed. Holographic displays brightened, showing montages of Brandon and Sloane's relationship, carefully curated moments that told a story of romance that had never actually happened. The crowd murmured appreciatively. Victoria glowed under the attention, her particular gift for making other people's moments about her own generosity fully engaged. Thank you all for coming. Victoria's voice carried through the space, amplified and enhanced by audio systems that made everyone sound important. Tonight we celebrate love. Brandon and Sloane's engagement represents everything beautiful about bringing families together, about building connections that matter. She paused for applause. Got it. Continued, but tonight isn't just about celebrating love. It's about family. About taking care of those less fortunate. About remembering what really matters. Marcus felt Lily stiffen beside him. Here it came. My dear brother-in-law Marcus has faced such hardship since my sister Elena's passing 7 years ago. Victoria's voice took on that particular tone of noble sympathy that made Marcus's jaw tighten. Raising Lily alone on a janitor's salary, navigating a world that can be so unforgiving to families without resources. It breaks my heart. Every day, it breaks my heart. The holographic displays shifted. Photos of Marcus appeared, mopping floors in Preston Financial Tower, cleaning conference rooms, working in his uniform. The images were clearly surveillance footage, pulled from building security systems. Someone had been documenting him. Someone had been building this presentation. The crowd murmured with appropriate sympathy. Marcus felt every eye in the room turn toward him, felt the weight of 500 people's pity like physical pressure. Marcus, Victoria said, extending her hand toward him. Please stand. Let everyone see the kind of dignity and strength that real family represents. He stood slowly, Lily's hand finding his under the table, squeezing hard enough to hurt. The applause started, that particular patronizing sound of wealthy people celebrating someone else's struggle. Victoria smiled, radiant with her own generosity. Marcus, Richard and I have been working on something special. A way to really help. To make sure you and Lily have the security you deserve. A new presentation appeared on the holographic displays. Official-looking documents. Contract language visible to everyone. First, a guaranteed janitorial contract with Preston Industries. 5 years. Full benefits. Because Richard values the kind of honest work you do, and we want to make sure you're taken care of. The crowd applauded. Richard looked uncomfortable but nodded, playing his role. Second, for Lily's education. Victoria produced an oversized check, the kind designed for photo opportunities. $25,000 toward her college expenses. Because Elena would have wanted her daughter to have every opportunity. More applause. Lily's hand in Marcus's was trembling now. He squeezed back. Silent communication. Wait. Not yet. And finally, something that honors Elena's memory and helps families like yours across the city. Victoria's voice swelled with emotion. Richard and I are establishing the Elena Chin Memorial Scholarship for children of service workers. So that Lily's story, your story, can inspire others to persevere despite circumstances. The room erupted. Standing ovation. 500 people celebrating their own benevolence, their willingness to help, their participation in something that made them feel good about their wealth. Victoria gestured for Marcus to come forward. Someone was passing him a microphone. The crowd was waiting for his grateful speech, his tears of appreciation, his acknowledgement of their collective generosity. Marcus took the microphone. Looked at Victoria's expectant face. At Richard's awkward smile. At Brandon's blank acknowledgement. At 500 people who had just witnessed his humiliation and called it charity. He pulled out his phone. Opened the building management app. Let the silence extend just long enough to become uncomfortable. Victoria, he said finally, voice calm and clear and carrying through the audio system to every corner of the room. That's incredibly generous. But before I accept, there's something I need to clarify. He tapped the screen. Outside the floor-to-ceiling smart glass walls, Manhattan's skyline stretched across the darkness. Preston Financial Tower dominated the view, 48 floors of steel and glass and cutting-edge architecture. As Marcus's finger moved across his phone, the building's lights began to flash. Every floor. Every window. A precise sequence that took 3 seconds to complete, then again. The pattern repeating. Lights going dark and bright in rhythmic precision, spelling something in Morse code for anyone who knew how to read it. MC owns this, the crowd noticed. Attention shifting from Marcus to the window to the flashing building and back. Confusion rippling through the space like weather pattern changes. Victoria stared. What is that? Marcus met her eyes. That's my building, Victoria. Preston Financial Tower. I own it. Richard's company pays me rent. Has been for 4 years. The room went silent. That particular silence that happened when fundamental assumptions got challenged, when reality reorganized itself too fast for people to process. Richard pulled out his phone, fingers moving frantically across holographic interface screens, pulling up property records, ownership documentation, the kind of information that was public if you knew where to look and had never occurred to him to check. His face went white. Marcus continued, voice still calm, conversational almost. I also own this building. The Metropolitan Club. Bought it 3 years ago through a holding company called Cornerstone Properties LLC. Which is owned by another holding company. Which eventually traces back to Chin Holdings. Which is me. He paused, let that settle. I've been your landlord for quite some time, Victoria. You've been hosting events in my building, paying me rent through enough corporate shells that you never realized who you were writing checks to. The crowd erupted, but different now. Not applause. Shocked murmurs, people pulling up their own devices, searching for confirmation, trying to understand how they'd missed this. Victoria stammered, but, you're a janitor. You live in Queens. You drive that horrible car. I work as a janitor because I like understanding how buildings actually function. From the ground up. Infrastructure, operations, tenant needs. You can't properly manage real estate from an office. You need to know what breaks, what wears out, what matters. Marcus pulled the ownership documents from his pocket, unfolded them. Physical paper, legal seals, the kind of proof that couldn't be dismissed as digital manipulation. I own 48 buildings across 3 states. 12 in Manhattan alone. My net worth is approximately $2.3 billion. Give or take market fluctuations. The room was chaos now. Everyone talking, phones out, the media drones hovering close enough to capture every word. Victoria looked like someone had physically struck her. Richard was staring at his phone screen, at ownership records that apparently confirmed everything Marcus was saying. Brandon, somehow, was the first to speak. Wait. Uncle Marcus is rich, despite everything. Marcus almost smiled. Yes, Brandon. I'm rich. Lily stood then, moving to stand beside her father. Proud and defiant and done hiding, and my scholarship? Victoria's voice was smaller now, uncertain in ways Marcus had never heard her sound. The one you helped arrange? I arranged it, Marcus said. Through an anonymous trust one established after Elena died. Lily earned her place at Columbia on merit, perfect SAT scores, valedictorian of her high school, economics research that's already being cited by graduate students. But I paid every cent of tuition. Room and board. Books. Everything. She's never needed your scholarship. She's never needed anything from you except to be treated like family instead of charity cases. Victoria sat down heavily. Someone handed her a drink. She took it with shaking hands, but why? Richard spoke up, his voice carrying the genuine confusion of someone whose world had just reorganized itself. Wait. Victoria found her voice finally, moving toward them with desperate energy. Marcus, you can't we're family. You can't make business decisions without discussing with family. We should talk about this. Privately. Away from, Marcus held up his hand. The room went quiet again, everyone wanting to hear what came next. Victoria, he said gently but firmly. You're in my building. You're hosting an event I own the venue for. You've spent 7 years treating me like someone who needed your permission to exist in your social circle. So right now, actually, be quiet. Let the adults handle business. Victoria's mouth opened. Closed. She looked around for support, from Richard. From Brandon, from anyone. Found only people watching to see what happened next, their social hierarchy algorithms probably recalibrating frantically, trying to figure out where everyone stood now that the order had inverted. She sat down. For the first time in 7 years, Victoria Preston had nothing to say. Marcus turned back to Gerald. Let's talk. My office. Tomorrow morning. Bring your portfolio analysis and your acquisition targets. We'll see what makes sense. Gerald smiled, shook his hand again. My daughter happy? They both looked at Lily and Sloane, still holding each other, Lily laughing at something Sloane whispered, both of them glowing with the particular radiance of people who'd stopped pretending. Yeah, Marcus said. I think she is. Then we're already ahead. The gala dissolved into controlled chaos the way only expensive events could, quiet panic behind forced smiles, social media damage control happening in real time through neural overlays, people recalibrating their relationship to everyone in the room based on new information that reorganized the entire social hierarchy. Marcus watched it happen from the same back table Victoria had assigned him, enjoying the irony that he was sitting in his own building, at his own event, still being treated like background scenery by people too shocked to update their assumptions. Society reporters huddled in corners, fingers moving frantically across holographic interfaces. Editors getting pinged with updates about the biggest story to hit Manhattan's social circuit in years. Media drones hovered at optimal angles, their AI systems probably having minor existential crises trying to categorize what they'd just witnessed. Brandon sat alone at the head table, staring at his hands like they contained answers to questions he didn't know how to ask. Richard Preston approached Marcus's table with the careful posture of someone navigating a minefield of his own assumptions. He pulled out a chair, sat without asking permission, and for a long moment just looked at Marcus like he was a puzzle that had suddenly revealed itself to be three-dimensional. You've been my landlord for 4 years. Richard said finally. Not a question. Statement of fact requiring confirmation, yes, Preston Financial Tower. The building with my name on it. That I use as my company headquarters. That building, Richard's laugh was unexpected, genuine surprise mixed with something that might have been respect. And you never said anything. Never mentioned it. Just kept showing up in a janitor uniform, cleaning my floors, while I paid rent to a holding company that eventually traced back to you. You never asked, Marcus said simply. You saw the uniform and made assumptions. Most people do, fair. Richard pulled out his phone, scrolled through something, probably ownership records he'd just discovered. That's actually fair. I should have looked closer. Should have wondered why a man who raised a daughter who got into Columbia on merit, who handled his wife's death with the kind of dignity that takes real strength, was still working night shifts 7 years later. He paused. For what it's worth, I always thought you were handling things remarkably well. I just didn't realize you were also building a real estate empire while doing it. It was the first genuine conversation they'd had in 7 years. Marcus studied Richard's face, looking for traces of the performative sympathy, the careful distance wealthy people maintained from anyone they considered beneath them. Found only honest confusion and something that looked like embarrassment. Elena used to say the best way to understand someone's character was to watch how they treated people they thought couldn't help them, Marcus said. I wanted to know who you all were when you thought I was just the janitor. The poor relative. The charity case, and now you know, now I know. Richard was quiet for a moment, processing. Victoria's going to have a complete breakdown, you realize. Her entire social media presence is built around charitable work and family values. This, he gestured at the chaos around them. This unmakes her brand. Victoria built a brand on my grief, Marcus said, voice calm but with edges. She turned Elena's death into content. Made my daughter into a sympathy narrative. She doesn't get to complain when reality catches up to performance. No, Richard agreed. I suppose she doesn't. He stood, extended his hand. For what it's worth, Marcus, I'm sorry. For assuming. For not looking closer. For letting my wife turn your family into a redemption arc. Marcus shook his hand. Apology noted, we should talk. About the building. About market rates. About, Richard smiled slightly. About whether you're planning to raise my rent now that I know who you are. Your lease is valid for 3 more years. Terms don't change based on who knows what. That's surprisingly decent of you. It's just business, Richard. Personal feelings don't affect contract terms. That's what separates amateurs from professionals. Richard nodded, left, got intercepted immediately by someone wanting to know what just happened. Marcus watched him handle it with practiced ease, the kind of crisis management that came from years of navigating public scrutiny. He'd be fine. Richard had actual skills underneath the wealth. Victoria was going to be a different problem. She found him 20 minutes later, after the crowd had thinned enough that cornering someone in a private room wouldn't be immediately noticed. The room was small, probably meant for coat storage, with smart glass walls set to privacy mode. Victoria stood with her arms crossed, mascara smudged, gown looking less perfect than it had an hour ago. How could you do that to me? Her voice was raw, stripped of the careful modulation she usually maintained. Embarrass me like that in front of everyone. Make me look foolish. Marcus leaned against the wall, took his time answering. I didn't make you look foolish, Victoria. You did that yourself. I was trying to help you, no. He kept his voice level, not angry, just factual. You were trying to help yourself feel better. Real help is quiet. Private. Dignified. What you did out there, the presentation, the photos, the public check ceremony, that wasn't about helping me. That was about performing your generosity for an audience. Making sure everyone saw how charitable you were. How good you were for taking care of your poor struggling relatives. Victoria's face crumpled. That's not, I wasn't. For 7 years, Victoria, you paraded your charity toward me in front of everyone who would listen. Used Elena's name for scholarship funds you took credit for. Turned my daughter into a project, a sympathetic narrative, a way to demonstrate your family values. Marcus straightened, met her eyes. You loved having a poor relative to help. It made you feel superior. Made you feel like a good person without requiring you to actually examine what good meant. I loved Elena. Tears now, real ones. She was my sister. I miss her every day. Marcus's voice softened slightly. I know you did. I know you do. But Victoria, Elena would have hated what you've done. She valued authenticity above everything else. That's why she left her family's money behind, why she chose a courthouse wedding over your father's society spectacle, why she made me promise to teach Lily that character matters more than capital. He paused. That's what I've been doing. Teaching Lily by example. Showing her what real values look like when nobody's keeping score. By lying to us, I didn't lie. You assumed. There's a difference. Marcus pulled out his phone, showed her the building management app, the portfolio overview, the numbers that proved everything he'd claimed. I built this while you were feeling sorry for me. While you were hosting charity events in my name. While you were treating my daughter like someone who needed your help to survive. Victoria stared at the screen, at wealth that exceeded her husband's, at proof that every assumption she'd made was wrong. I don't understand. Why? Why keep working as a janitor if you had all this? Because my father was a custodian. Immigrant from Taiwan, worked himself to death so I could go to college. He taught me that every building starts with the foundation, that you can't understand the top if you've never seen the bottom. Marcus pocketed his phone. The janitorial work isn't punishment or poverty. It's education. It's staying connected to what matters. It's remembering that the people who keep buildings running are just as important as the people who own them. I never thought you were unimportant, you thought I was pitiable. That's worse. He moved toward the door, paused. Elena used to say you were so busy looking at price tags, you missed value. She'd be disappointed in both of us right now, me for letting this go on so long, you for never questioning your assumptions. But at least I'm trying to teach Lily something true. What are you teaching Brandon? He left her standing there, alone with her shattered narrative and her smudged makeup and the dawning realization that she'd have to rebuild her entire public persona around being wrong about everything. 2 weeks later, Marcus sat across from Gerald Whitmore in a conference room that cost more per hour to rent than most people earned in a day. Spread between them were property portfolios, market analyses, acquisition targets, and the kind of detailed financial documentation that separated serious business discussions from wishful thinking. Gerald had spent the first hour trying to figure out what Marcus wanted, the usual negotiating dance where everyone pretended they weren't already committed to a deal. But Marcus had been direct: combine portfolios, share resources, stop competing and start collaborating. Build something that mattered instead of just something that generated returns. Whitmorchan Properties, Gerald said, testing the name. Orchan Whitmore. Doesn't matter. Combined portfolio of 127 buildings. Your operations expertise with my construction connections. Your understanding of tenant needs with my development experience. He leaned back. Why? You don't need me. You're doing fine alone, I'm doing fine, Marcus agreed. But fine isn't the goal. The goal is building something that lasts. That means more than just accumulating property. And honestly, Gerald, I'm tired of competing with you. You're smart, you're ethical, you actually care about quality construction. We'd accomplish more together than we would trying to outbid each other on every decent property that comes to market. Plus our daughters are in love and you'd rather not spend family dinners decades from now making awkward small talk about how we're business rivals. Marcus smiled. That too. Gerald studied him for a long moment. Why'd you really keep the janitor job? And don't give me the foundation speech. I want the real reason. Marcus considered how much truth to share. Decided all of it. My father died of a heart attack in a building he was cleaning. 58 years old, alone in a stairwell at 3 in the morning, and nobody found him until the day shift came in. The building owner didn't send flowers. Didn't call my mother. Just hired a replacement and sent us a bill for the uniform my father died in. He met Gerald's eyes. I keep the job because I never want to become the kind of person who forgets that buildings are maintained by human beings with families and dreams and worth that has nothing to do with their bank balances. Gerald was quiet. Then he raised his glass of water. They'd skipped the scotch, keeping this meeting sharp and clear. To our fathers. And to our daughters, who are definitely smarter than both of us, Marcus raised his own glass. To building something that matters, they signed the partnership agreement that afternoon. By evening, the financial press was already running analyses of what Whitmorton Properties meant for Manhattan real estate markets. By the next morning, 3 competitors had called wanting to discuss acquisition opportunities. Marcus ignored them all and went home to find Lily and Sloane cooking dinner in his modest Queen's kitchen, laughing about something on Sloane's phone. Comfortable in each other's space in the way people were when they'd stopped performing. "Dad." Lily looked up, flowers somehow in her hair despite the fact they were making pasta sauce, not baking. "How'd it go?" "We're partners. Officially. Whitmorton Properties launches next month." Sloane turned from the stove, wooden spoon in hand. "Which means Lily and I are technically going to be working for our fathers." "That's going to be weird." "Junior positions," Marcus clarified. "Learning the business from the ground up. Same way I did. You'll start with building management, tenant relations, understanding how properties actually function, so we're going to be janitors?" Lily grinned. "Teasing, you're going to understand what janitorial work entails, yes. Among other things. If you want to run this company someday, you need to know every aspect of how it operates." Sloane set down the spoon, moved closer to where Lily was chopping vegetables. Their shoulders touched, casual intimacy that came from 6 months of stolen moments and 3 weeks of open acknowledgement. "Can I ask you something? Why'd you let us think you were struggling?" "Why not just tell Lily the truth?" Marcus leaned against the counter, watching them together, his daughter and the woman she loved, both brilliant, both navigating a world that would judge them for everything except what mattered. "Because the truth isn't what you have. It's who you are. And I wanted Lily to understand that her worth had nothing to do with the balance in her account. That who she became as a person mattered more than what she inherited as assets." "Did it work?" Lily asked quietly. "You're asking me if I'm proud of who you are. I'm asking if the lesson was worth 7 years of letting people think we needed their charity." Marcus moved to where she stood, put his hand over hers on the cutting board. "Lily, you got into Columbia on merit. You're writing papers that graduate students cite. You fell in love with someone based on character, not connections. You've stayed kind and grounded while watching your cousin waste every advantage on empty status games. So yes, it worked. You're exactly who your mother hoped you'd be." Lily's eyes were bright, wet at the corners. "I miss her." "Me too." Every day. Sloane wrapped her arms around Lily from behind, rested her chin on her shoulder. "Your father is a billionaire. You've been living here in this apartment. Dad wanted me to understand what real life costs," Lily said, leaning back into Sloane's embrace. "This place isn't fake. It's who we are underneath everything else." Sloane kissed her temple. "I fell in love with you when I thought you were checking prices because you had to. Now I know you could buy the coffee shop where we had our first date. Does that change anything, should it?" "It changes everything." Sloane turned Lily to face her. "It means you chose me before you knew my last name meant something in your family's business circle. Before you knew I could be an asset to your father's company. You chose me when you thought I was Brandon Preston's straight fiancé and you had no logical reason to hope." "That's," her voice caught. "That's the most real thing anyone's ever done for me." They kissed, slow and certain, the kind of kiss that came from knowing all the secrets were finally out. Marcus turned back to the pasta sauce, giving them privacy while staying present, the particular parental skill of being available without being intrusive. Later, after dinner. After Sloane left with promises to return tomorrow, Lily found him on the apartment's small balcony overlooking Queens. The city stretched out in layers of light and shadow, wealth and struggle visible in the architecture if you knew how to read it. "Brandon came by the office today," she said, joining him at the railing. Your office. The one he never knew existed. Marcus raised an eyebrow. And, he wants you to teach him. About business. Real business, not trust fund trading. He said he's been thinking about what you said at the gala, about assumptions, about never asking what Sloane wanted because he assumed she wanted him. Lily paused. He sounded lost, Dad. Like he'd just realized he's 26 and has no idea who he is when nobody's telling him what to be. What did you tell him? I told him he'd have to ask you himself. That I wasn't going to run interference for someone who spent years barely acknowledging I existed. She glanced at him. Was that too harsh? No. It was honest. Brandon needs honest more than he needs easy right now. Marcus considered. Did he seem serious? Or was this another phase, another thing his mother will arrange for him and he'll coast through on family connections? He seemed terrified. Which probably means serious. 3 days later, Brandon showed up at Marcus's penthouse office, the space with walls of screens and city views and none of the modest pretense of the Queen's apartment. He stood in the entrance looking uncomfortable. Wearing jeans and a plain shirt instead of his usual designer everything, like he was trying to shed his image but didn't quite know how. Uncle Marcus. He stopped, corrected himself. Marcus. I don't know what to call you now. Marcus is fine. Sit. Brandon sat, looked around the office, at the technology and the art and the clear evidence of wealth that had been invisible for 7 years. I've been thinking about what you said. About assumptions. About how I never asked Sloane what she wanted, never looked past the arrangement, never questioned whether she actually wanted me or just accepted that I was the path her father laid out, and I realized I've been doing that my whole life. Letting Mom arrange everything. Following Dad's path. Dating women Mom approved of, working in jobs Dad suggested, living in the apartment they bought, driving the car they leased. I'm 26 years old and I don't know who I am when nobody's telling me what to be. Brandon's hands were shaking slightly. I feel like an NPC in someone else's game. Like I'm just following a script I never agreed to read. Marcus leaned back in his chair, studying his nephew. Saw genuine confusion there, the beginning of awareness that life required choices and he'd been avoiding them by letting other people choose for him. So what do you want to do about it? I want to learn. Actually learn. How to work. How to build something. How to be worth something when the last name doesn't matter and the trust fund doesn't smooth everything over. Brandon met his eyes. Will you teach me? About business? Real business. You want to work for me. I want to work, period. Doesn't matter who for. I just want to see if there's anything under all this. He gestured at himself, at the expense of education and the genetic enhancements and the life that had been curated rather than lived. Anything real. Anything that's actually me instead of just performance, Marcus considered. Saw his nephew clearly, maybe for the first time, not just the trust fund trader. Not just Victoria's son, but a young man waking up to the realization that he'd wasted his 20s being who other people wanted and had no idea what he wanted for himself. You'll start in building management, Marcus said finally. Learning maintenance, operations, tenant relations. Same path I took. Same path Lily and Sloane are taking. No shortcuts, no special treatment, no using the family name to skip steps, building management. Brandon processed that. So janitorial work, among other things. Is that a problem? Brandon laughed, shaky but genuine. I'm terrified. I've never actually worked a day in my life. Not really. Everything's been arranged, managed, smoothed over by family money and connections. This is going to be a disaster, probably, Marcus agreed. But at least it'll be your disaster. Your choice. Your chance to find out who you are when nobody's protecting you from consequences. He pulled up a holographic display, showed Brandon the training schedule. You start Monday. 6 a.m. Building in Brooklyn. You'll shadow the maintenance team, learn systems, understand what actually keeps a property functional. Fair warning, it's going to be harder than anything you've done, pay less than you're used to, and nobody's going to care that you're a Preston. Good. Brandon stood, extended his hand. Thank you. For giving me a chance. For not just writing me off as the useless nephew. Marcus shook his hand. Don't thank me yet. Thank me in 6 months if you're still showing up. Brandon left looking determined and terrified in equal measure. Marcus watched him go, wondered if Victoria knew her son was trying to become his own person, decided it didn't matter. Brandon's journey wasn't about his mother anymore. It was about figuring out who he was underneath the expectations. 3 months later, Marcus discovered Victoria had started a blog. Wealth Perspectives, Understanding Diverse Family Economics. The tagline was something about examining privilege through authentic family narratives. The content was Victoria processing her spectacular public humiliation by positioning herself as someone who'd learned important lessons about assumption and worth. She'd somehow made herself the hero of his story. Lily showed him the blog over breakfast, tablet propped against the coffee maker, her expression caught between amusement and annoyance. Should we say something? She's literally turning your entire life into her content without permission. Marcus read through a few posts. They were actually decent, Victoria discussing her assumptions, her performative charity, her realization that help without dignity wasn't help at all. But they were also framed as her journey, her growth, her transformation. His role was reduced to teaching opportunity. Lily barely appeared except as sympathetic background. No, he said finally. Let her have it. She needs to believe she's learned something, even if she's learning it the wrong way. And honestly, some of what she's writing is probably helping people examine their own privilege. He handed back the tablet. Her followers aren't our concern. Let her process publicly if that's what she needs. But 3 weeks later, Victoria showed up at his office unannounced. Security let her up because she was technically family, and Marcus looked up from property analysis to find her standing in his doorway wearing jeans and minimal makeup, the first time he'd seen her without full society armor in years. I want to write a book, she said without preamble. About you. About this journey. About what I learned and what other families could learn from examining their assumptions about wealth and worth. No, but Marcus, this is important. People need to hear, Victoria. He set down his tablet, gave her his full attention. You can write about your own journey. Your realization. Your growth. But my life isn't your content. Lily's life isn't your redemption arc. You want to help people? Write honestly about yourself. About how you turned grief into performance, how you used charity to feel superior, how you had to learn that help without dignity is just control with better PR. That story might actually matter to someone. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. You really don't want the recognition, do you? The credit for building all this. The acknowledgement that you've been more successful than Richard, more strategic than my entire social circle. I have everything I need, Marcus said simply. I have Lily. I have work that matters. I have respect from people who know the truth. Your blog followers' opinions don't add or subtract from any of that. She studied him like he was speaking a foreign language she was only beginning to understand. Elena would be proud of you, Elena would be disappointed in both of us. Me for letting this go on so long. You for never questioning your assumptions. But at least we're trying to do better now. Victoria left quietly. 2 weeks later, her blog pivoted to my journey from performative charity to real understanding. The posts became more honest, more vulnerable, less about Marcus and more about her own struggle with privilege and performance. The engagement actually increased. Apparently, people responded to authenticity more than curated narratives. 6 months after the gala, Marcus completed the purchase of Fairhaven Country Club, Victoria's favorite venue, where she'd been a member for 15 years, where she played tennis with society wives and attended charity luncheons and reinforced her position in the hierarchy of people who mattered. He implemented changes immediately. Doubled janitorial staff wages. Added full benefits for all workers. Created a scholarship fund for employees' children. Maintained membership for existing members but added income-diverse tiers, making the club accessible to people who couldn't drop $50,000 on annual dues. Victoria found out when she arrived for her weekly tennis game and saw the new sign, Fairhaven Club, a Whitmorton property. She called him from the parking lot. "You bought my club." "I bought a club that you happen to belong to. Why? Why this place? Why now?" Marcus leaned back in his office chair, looked out at Manhattan's skyline, at buildings he owned and buildings he didn't, and the city that kept reinventing itself regardless of who thought they controlled it. Because the workers there were underpaid and undervalued. Good people, most of them supporting families, all of them keeping that place running while members treated them like furniture. "I'm fixing that. You're welcome to remain a member. Your dues now partially fund scholarships for service workers' kids, including the children of the people who park your car and serve your lunch." Silence on the line. Then, quieter, "That's actually really beautiful. It's just fair, Victoria, thank you." Her voice was different, genuine, stripped of performance. "For not canceling my membership. You would have been justified, your family. We're just redefining what that means." 1 year after the gala that changed everything, Lily and Sloane got married on a rooftop garden in Queens. One of Marcus's first building purchases, back when he was still learning how to navigate property acquisition and hadn't yet built the empire that made his name synonymous with ethical real estate development. The venue held 150 guests, not 500. Real flowers instead of holographic projections. A food truck from the couple's favorite taco place instead of a 5-star caterer. String lights and actual conversation instead of media drones and performance anxiety. Brandon attended with a girlfriend Marcus had never met, a teacher named Sarah who worked at a community center in Brooklyn and had no idea Brandon's family had money until the wedding. Brandon looked different. Thinner, harder in the face, like he'd discovered muscles and struggle and purpose. He was managing a building for Whitmorton now, working his way up the same path Marcus had taken, learning that competence mattered more than connections. Richard Preston gave the first toast, champagne glass raised under string lights and city stars. "I spent 30 years building a tech empire. Made billions, changed industries, got my name on buildings and my face on magazine covers. I thought that made me successful." He paused, found Marcus in the crowd. "Then I watched Marcus build something better. A life with meaning. Work that mattered. A daughter who understood that character counts more than capital." To the couples, and to the parents who raised them right, Gerald Whitmore stood second, his toast looser, more emotional than Richard's calculated delivery. "My daughter taught me that love isn't a business arrangement. That people aren't assets to be optimized. That sometimes the best deal is the one where everyone wins because they're choosing each other instead of being chosen by circumstance." He raised his glass toward Marcus. "Marcus taught me that wealth isn't about what you show. It's about what you do when nobody's watching. Together, they're teaching me that family isn't who you're born to, it's who shows up when it matters." To Lily and Sloane, and to building lives that matter more than legacies, Victoria's toast surprised everyone. She stood with her hands shaking slightly, champagne glass catching light, and for once didn't try to make the moment about herself. "Elena used to tell me, Victoria, you're so busy looking at the price tag. You miss the value." I miss her every day. But watching Marcus honor her memory by living with integrity while I was busy playing Lady Bountiful taught me what she meant. She looked directly at Lily and Sloane. To Lily and Sloane, may you always choose substance over show. May you build something real. And may you forgive people like me who take too long to learn what should have been obvious from the start. She sat down. Marcus caught her eye, nodded once. Not forgiveness exactly. Not absolution. Just acknowledgement that people could change if they wanted to badly enough. Then it was his turn. Marcus stood, feeling the weight of a year's transformation, 7 years of strategy, and a lifetime of his father's lessons about foundations and worth. The crowd quieted, waiting for his words. 7 years ago I lost the love of my life, he began, voice steady despite the grief that never really left. Elena made me promise in those final moments that I'd teach our daughter 2 things, to know her worth, and to choose authenticity over approval. I kept that promise the only way I knew how, by living it. By working hard. By staying quiet. By letting people think what they wanted while building something real. He found Lily in the crowd, her hand in Sloane's, both of them radiant with the particular glow of people who'd stopped pretending. Lily, you've exceeded every hope your mother and I ever had for you. And Sloane, you saw who she really was before you knew what we had. That's how I know you're perfect for each other. That's how I know this matters. He raised his glass. Elena used to say, Marcus, don't tell them what you have. Show them who you are. So I showed you. And you both showed us. And somehow, together, we built something true. To my daughter and my new daughter-in-law, may you always value character over currency, love over luxury, and each other over everything else. The reception dissolved into conversation and dancing and the particular joy of people who genuinely liked each other gathering without agenda. Marcus found himself on the rooftop edge, looking out at Queens becoming Brooklyn becoming Manhattan. The city he'd conquered quietly while everyone was busy looking elsewhere. You really did it. Gerald joined him, loosened tie, champagne glass mostly empty. Raised a daughter who knows who she is. Built an empire nobody saw coming. Changed the rules while everyone else was still playing the game. I just did what my father taught me. Start with the foundation. Build something that lasts. Care about the people who do the actual work. Your father would be proud. Marcus thought about that. About his father dying alone in a stairwell. About promises made and kept. About Elena's final words and Lily's first steps and the long quiet accumulation of choices that became a life. Maybe, he said. Or maybe he'd tell me I overcomplicated things. That I could have just been honest from the start instead of playing the long game. Would it have mattered? If you'd told them right away, no. They needed to show me who they were first. I needed to see it clearly, without the distortion wealth creates. Marcus finished his champagne. Now I know. Now everyone knows. And we can all stop pretending. Late that night, after most guests had left, Marcus found himself back in Preston Financial Tower wearing his janitor uniform. Old habits, comfortable routines, the satisfaction of maintaining something he'd built. But this time Brandon was with him, learning to properly maintain HVAC systems on the 34th floor. You really still do this? Brandon asked, watching Marcus check pressure readings with practiced efficiency. Best thinking time I have. Plus buildings tell you their secrets at night. When to invest. When to sell. What needs fixing before it becomes a crisis. They worked in comfortable silence, uncle and nephew, both of them learning who they were underneath expectations. Then footsteps on the stairs. Lily and Sloane appeared, still in their wedding dresses, carrying coffee in paper cups from the all-night bodega Marcus liked. Thought you might need this, Lily said, grinning at the absurdity of it all. Sloane looked around the pristine lobby, at Marcus in his janitor uniform and Brandon in maintenance gear and both of them in designer wedding dresses. We ditched our own reception to bring our dad's coffee. Is this what family means now? Marcus took the coffee, warm and perfect and exactly what he needed. This is exactly what it means. The four of them sat on the pristine marble floor, wedding dresses, and work uniforms, drinking convenience store coffee and talking about building management at 2 in the morning. Outside, the city lights reflected off 48 floors of Marcus's empire, built in silence, revealed in truth, and shared with people who finally understood its value. Elena would have loved this moment. The authenticity of it. The way substance had won over show. The way Lily had found love and Brandon had found purpose, and everyone had stopped pretending long enough to see what actually mattered. Marcus raised his coffee cup. To foundations. And to building lives that last. They drank to that, all of them, family redefined by choice rather than obligation, sitting in a building Marcus owned while wearing clothes that represented who they really were underneath everything else. It was perfect. It was real. It was enough.